Hiya. We're going to look at masking today. We're going to use channels. We're not going to use any sort of selections with the magic wand, etc. And we're also going to use an image that maybe is lacking in contrast. It's not going to be one of these tutorials where you've got a high-end model shot where there's a big contrast between the model's hair and the background. As you can see, left and right of the model there, they're quite close. So these two images, they were taken from StockSnap. I'll put the address down the bottom. This shot by Andrew Webber, and our background shot by Joe Cook. So what I'll do, I'll just drag this image into the other one. Okay, and we'll position that roughly where we think we want it. Seems about right. We'll check with the opacity. What some people might not know, rather than going into your downward arrow there, taking your opacity down or typing in there, you just hover over the word opacity in the layer palette and we can just drag it so you can see she's nicely sort of positioned between the lifeguard tower and the other woman on the beach. Okay, so to start masking, we'll go to our channels. I'll pull this out so we can see. Basically, channels, they hold the colour information of the file, but they represent it in black and white and greys. So what we're looking for in the channels is a large contrast between the model, i.e. the girl, and the background. So if we just go Command 3, you can see the shortcut there. It's not too bad, the contrast, so if I hit Command 4, look at the green channel. It's a bit muddy still. Go Command 5. So it's probably between the red and the green. Or red and the blue, sorry. So we'll go with the blue channel. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drag the blue channel down to the new icon to copy it. Double click there and call it mask so there's no confusion. So ideally we want either the girl to be all black and the background to be white, or vice versa, so we've got a clear mask. So to start with, we'll use levels. So I can go image adjust levels, or I can do the shortcut Command Control L. Obviously I'm on a Mac, so it's Command. So what I'll do, I'll just take the white slider here and just drag it up, and I'm concentrating around this area, trying to clean up these whites. And the shadow slider here, if I just bring this in, okay, till we've got a sort of contrast we like. Obviously this is not going to be perfect at this stage, so I'm quite happy with that, so we just OK it. And now we have to do some manual work. So if I go to my dodge tool, and you can see in the top of the range here, you can affect various tones. And I'm going to go to highlights, and I'm going to keep my exposure quite low, probably about 40. So if I just size the brush up a bit, I'm just going to go around the edge and whiten, or lighten I should say, whiten, just to get an area where I can maybe get a selection tool through there. I go in very gently. Okay, seems to be working okay. And you can just talk amongst yourselves while I'm doing this. Just a bit down here. So the fact it's working on the highlights, a bit of it will spill into the midtones, which is why you can see I'm using quite a small brush with the low exposure. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite now. I'm going to go into the burn tool, and I'm going to go to the shadows. Exposure, let's try 30. I can go a bit bigger now because I know this area I've cleaned out with the whites, so I can just go along the edge here. This is the tedious part of the tutorial where you just have to sit there listening to me breathe. Okay, so let's go over some of these waspy areas. I'll take my exposure up a bit because I know that the other side of that cap it is white. Because I have burnt it before, dodged it even. I always get those two mixed up, and I've been using Photoshop for years. Okay, so just come down here. Okay, so what I can do now is I can just use a lasso tool, grab huge chunks of this area, oops, it's Command Delete on a Mac to fill with the background colour. I'll just get this area around the bottom. You'll notice it's my first tutorial and I'm going to leave mistakes in. I'm not precious. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this area now. I'm just going to dodge that again, just to get rid of it. What I can do now is the exact opposite. I can just grab huge areas. So this time you're taking, it's obviously because we haven't got a clean cut shot of a model on a perfectly lit background. This is the way you'll get round it using your dodge and burn. Okay, so we've got a pretty clean mask now, so if I command click it on the icon in the channels palette, it gives me a selection of the background. Okay, so go back to the layer palette, select layer 1. Now that's the background selected, so we want to invert that selection, so we just go up to select and inverse. So it's flipped from selecting the background to her. So now in the layer palette I can just click the layer mask and they're gone. Okay, if I zoom into that, you can see it's not too bad at all. Okay, one major problem with this though, and I don't know if any photographers out there, but depth of field. What that is, she's slightly out of focus, but the background, if you look at the numbers on the HUD, they're perfectly sharp, so our subconscious is telling us that this is not quite right. So all I would do is very quickly and easy just go to blur, Gaussian blur, and I would just give it just tad blur in the background. Being very specific there, tad blur 3.5. And if I Command Z or Control Z that, undo, you can see the difference there. Okay, that's with the blur, that's without it. Just doesn't look right. Okay, and that, in a nutshell, is how we work with using the channels. So you pick the channel with the greatest contrast between the model, i.e. the girl, and the background image, duplicate that channel, and just using your levels to get your whites up, and then work with your dodge and burn just to get the separation between the model and the background. Okay, so if you like this tutorial, then comment in the bottom section, get in touch, any suggestions, let me know. I'll take it from there. Cheers.